committee meeting of the whole. This is really a continuation from last week. We had gotten into some discussions about the resolution that the council approved to hire a firm or individual to conduct an investigation dealing with some allegations that were made by Chief Prine after he had been put on administrative leave by Mayor Stimson. So I know, why don't we take up the firm or individual?
I would suggest we take up
the scope
of the
first.
investigation first, because that may lend some information to who we should pick to actually be the
All right.
party.
Everybody on board with that? Let's look at the scope first and then go to who should do the investigation. All right. So, Mr. Daves, I'm going to start with you because I know you sent us all an email with kind of a broad-ranging question to put to all of the items that we may ask to be investigated. So why don't you start?
My suggestion was that we, with respect to the scope, that the scope be defined by a series of questions, because we're much more likely to get the information we need at the end of this investigation if we've posed questions. So the one I suggested with respect to the ShotSpotter contract was, was there anything illegal, unethical, or out of policy with respect to the grant of the contract to the firm down in Florida? And so that's kind of an example of how we would approach each of these allegations of Mr. Prine. In other words, the ones we wanted to pursue, it'd be better if we could squeeze those down to a question rather than kind of an open-ended. We're much more likely to get where we want to go if we know where we're going.
Okay, one more time on your question.
Question is, with respect to this item of inquiry, was there anything illegal, unethical, or out of policy?
And that would be to every item.
To every item.
To every item. All right, what does everybody think about that? Corey?
I mean, that's the whole point. The reason why we need to investigate. You know, we want to see if anything that was illegal took place, anything unethical took place. So I think we should do that with every allegation. Yeah, or out of policy as well. And I think that's important to know the policy for that third party, to know the policies and procedures in place to know if anything was out of place. So I'm in agreement with that.
Okay, Ben?
I would say I like the idea of applying a standard. And, you know, this standard may work, but I would say in regards to unethical, so would we use the standard that's applied to, say, the Alabama Ethics Commission? That would be the standards, as defined by them.
Any action which would
Violate the ethics.
violate the ethics laws.
Okay. And anything else as far as, what the standard should be? I'd love to hear anybody else's comments about that, but I think those get to the core of what we're supposed to be investigating to find out, was it illegal, was it unethical, or was it out of policy? I like that.
All right. William?
Sometimes asking a specific question limits what the special counsel can do when you ask a specific question. That's okay once they know the parameter of the scope. But a specific question goes to a specific task, and it limits what may be found outside that specific question. So I'm kind of iffy. As it goes to policy and procedure and methods, policy, procedure, and practices. The police department, the administration, whoever's involved, the first thing I would suggest is that the special counsel is truly versed in that. So that's item number one. So special counsel needs to be truly versed in that and given time to get versed in that plus SOGB. Second thing is that I think that everyone should be able to be questioned. So at some point, there may have to be some type of subpoena power for questioning of individuals that may need to be questioned, as far as developing a parameter before the scope and what can happen.
The Act provides for subpoenas.
That's why I'm saying this out loud. I mean, I've read it, I've studied it over the last week, so I know what I'm talking about today. So there has to be some type of subpoena power there for investigatory policy or procedures. All right. And then the next thing is that I agree with Joel when we need to know whether or not things were either done correctly or incorrectly when it comes to policies, procedure, and practices. If they were correct or if they were incorrect. Item number one is scope, because those accusations were made at more than one level when those things were suggested. Well, the chief alluded to influence. He alluded to a threat. He alluded to to a few other things where that section would come to involve influence, where he said that.
Are you on the ShotSpotter contract? Where are you?
No, you asked me what I thought. Are y'all looking at just ShotSpotter?
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, no. See, for me, ShotSpotter's already gone because the administration already
I
said.
think he's talking about just some of the.
Yeah,
others.
I'm talking about the parameter of how we get to what we want. See, because the thing is that this council has to be 100% objective. Period. We can't be tunnel. I can't have tunnel vision on one item or one thing or where we're going. So we have to be objective, and that's why I think the parameters of what the special counsel can do as far as his actions before scope is so important. So that's why. So, and I'm hoping I'm articulating this extremely well, because the thing is that I'm operating off the premises that everybody's innocent unless we find something totally egregious or wrong here. So as the special counsel goes through this process, then he or she or they should be allowed to be able to work within those parameters. One, being versed in policy, procedure, and practices. Two, Zabiac. And then from there, being able to have subpoena power to call people to either question or testify before them and then bringing it back. And then after that, we have to have a section that invokes some type of executive session, because at some point we don't need to be involving people's good character and nature in that. So as we discuss things that we find, and then we go to the scope. And what I was saying is I agree with you on the scope about what you said, but just being specific with a question limits special counsel to what they can actually look at.
Sure it does.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
But the thing is that the general public wants the truth, and we don't want to direct them to say this is all we want to look at, and then they turn around and find out that, oh, wait a minute, that this one little sentence here may be truthful, but everything leading up to it was incorrect or not right. So that's, in my mind, that's not being 100% honest.
Hang on, William, are you?
I can go through each one that I've got a whole 5 pages here. I've asked Pavonia to type it so I could just give it to y'all. It'd take an hour to go through my 5 pages. So I'd rather have her type it and give it to you as opposed to trying to talk through all of it.
Can I add some clarity?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Davis wanted to.
Yeah, go ahead.
This will help with this.
Okay.
Let's
All right, Joel,
let's
you
hit-
want to go to Ben? Go ahead. And then we're going to go to Josh because we're trying to go around the table.
If we don't narrow the scope of the inquiry, it'll be like Ken Starr's inquiry. will be here forever. Completely we need to narrow the scope of the inquiry so it addresses the things that we're particularly interested in. And that's why I suggested the question format, so it can be laser focused on the things that are important to the council and to the people. But if we don't do that, then it's going to go on forever.
All right. So
Okay, Ben,
the single most important factor in analyzing a complaint is to clearly and concisely identify the complainant's assertions. A properly framed allegation is a factual proposition to be proved or disproved during an investigation, in which, if true, would constitute a violation and/or wrongdoing. If an allegation cannot be properly framed, an investigation would be inappropriate. Framed allegations must contain the following, getting to some questions that you must ask. Number one, who committed the alleged violation? Number two, what violation was committed? Number three, what law, regulation, procedure, standard, or policy may have been violated? Number four, what policy supports the decision of the allegation? Number five, when and where did the alleged violation occur? Those are questions that I think you must be able to answer, and those are pulled from our very own Office of Professional Responsibility. That's the standard that they apply, and I think the same standard that they apply should be applied to this matter.
Yeah, but
hang on. And you're suggesting what?
Well, I'm suggesting that when we're framing, step one is to clearly and concisely identify the complainant's assertions.
So basically take what's in OPR. Are you saying that needs to be in place of?
No, he's saying that we need to clearly identify the plaintiff,
Okay.
which would be in this case Chief Klein.
Okay.
Yes, that's
All right.
exactly right. And what we've heard in the media is a bunch of back and forth. In the media, response to this, response to that, and Chief has certainly made some allegations. I would think, ideally, you would want to hear precisely from him what those allegations are. Whether they submit them in writing or we put him in front of, the special counsel, whatever it is. But with the questions being asked like this, as OPR would do when they investigate any sort of matter. Who committed the alleged violation? Specifically, what violation was committed? So on and so forth. With the standard being the same standard here, whether it has been what law, regulation, procedure, standard, or policy may have been violated. That's the standard.
Okay, so that would go with the basic question, illegal, unethical, or outside.
Yeah, I think
outside the
what
box.
law, regulation, procedure, standard,
Okay.
or policy may have
All
been
right.
violated. I think it falls precisely in line with what you're saying, doesn't it?
yeah, but
Okay.
it also
Um,
falls behind the statute of how we get there and the authority which the special counsel have.
We're talking about subpoenas.
Well, no, just the whole parameter, just like I told you.
Well, why don't we go
I
around the
agree, I
table
agree
before
with
we?
Joel with what he said, but you're just reiterating the format in another way of what I told you.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right,
Josh.
Josh.
So I look at it and I see four things that I really think that we need to look at and see if it was illegal, out of policy, unethical. I think that we do have to, we need to look at how the shot spotter contract came about. I think, there's a narrative, two narratives, really three, if you ask the guy that is on the media all the time, that of how we got to that point. I think that has to be addressed. Then I think also the administration of MPD and the tech center, again, going back to the three issues that we need to find out. Number two, seeking to remove or asking the former police chief to step down from his office. I think that process, I mean, how did it occur? What's the timeline? Again, going back to the three things that we're talking about. And then finally, kind of, specifically in this case, the addressing of grievances with non-merit employees, specifically Chief Prine or former Chief Prine. To me, I think those are the four things that really in total. I mean, we can get into I think that those encompass everything that we need to look at based on his grievances.
So
Say those
you're
again?
Yeah.
you're looking basically at categories.
That's
like
what I'm
1, 2,
looking
3,
at.
and 4 other
Yeah.
categories.
Yes, I'm looking
Okay.
at the four categories.
All right, say it one more time, Michael. Are you getting all of this? Okay.
So shot spotter and how that contract came about. Again, we've gotten the OPR. We've also gotten the Burr Foreman. We've got that. So let's go ahead and look into that. Even though we're not, well, no, just, I mean, we've already received those reports before. And I think the administration obviously was something that struck a nerve with the former police chief. So if that's something that
Talking
accusations are
about
out there,
reporting arrangements within the police department?
yes, I would just
Between
say,
the
is
police
it
department and the administration?
yeah, I would say that needs to be, I mean, how does it report up? Is that legal? Is that unethical? Is that based on policy? Is there a written policy, I guess, of how this is done? I mean, I know there's an org chart, but I mean, that's probably going to be the answer. There's an org chart.
GCTC operates with MPD? Is that-
Yeah,
that's the
how do
question?
we do that?
Or who
So,
do they report
who do they
to? Is
report
there an
to?
org charts or?
And then I
something like
guess the
that?
timeline of events. I mean, obviously that struck a nerve whenever he was asked to vacate his position. So what was surrounding that issue? And then I would also say, again, ending with the address of grievances on non-merit employees, and specifically in this instance, since this is what we are, and since the resolution that we passed last week says we're going to deal with Chief Prine, or the allegations of Chief Prine, addressing how his grievances were handled. I mean, to me, if those things that we dive down into, I think that's really kind of surrounding all the allegations that he's thrown out there. So.
Okay, and Michael, you got all of that. Okay, so basically 4 categories. The main question, the parameters from the OPR, 4 categories. Am I kind of on the right track here? Is that?
But I want to be clear, when we talk about scope, we're talking about the illegal, unethical, or out of policy.
Right.
For lack of a better term, these are the topics or the areas of fact finding that we.
Yeah, kind of the categories, because that was like a main category and it could be.
Ascertain whether there was any illegal, unethical, or out of policy actions taken by the administration or its employees with
In these
respect to
general topics.
in these 4 general topics.
And then go with the OPR.
Yeah, I mean, we still have to,
Well, I think that's what
Clearly and
they would need to
concisely.
look at it as they do their investigation. too.
clearly and concisely identify the complainant's assertions, I think is something that must be done. Councilman Woods has raised, 4 topics in there, but, the resolution we passed says surrounding the April 9th placement on administrative leave, I believe is what it says. And so, concisely identify the complainant's assertions regarding that matter. I don't know how we clearly and concisely identify those without having somebody, ask him or have him put in writing what these allegations specifically are.
Are you saying the chief?
Yes.
Absolutely. I think that they should have full access to him if he wants to respond.
That's right.
And I think it'd be
voluntary.
right. It would be voluntary on his part.
Joel,
But
I
that's
just-
where
I don't like the idea of having Chief Prine define the scope of the investigation,
it's not.
which I think is what's being suggested,
I don't
is that
think
we're
so.
going to allow Chief Prine to define the scope of the investigation for the city council. I don't think that's a healthy precedent to set.
I can provide some assistance here regarding going back to the resolution that we've already passed, where it says, it is the council's information that during or just before the work week of April 8th through 11th. So, complaints leading up to the work week of April 11th or the week just before that sets some guardrails there. Wouldn't you say?
It says right here, after all those.
Yeah.
preliminary
Number
steps,
6 is what I'm reading from.
I'm reading from number 12. After we get to that, what was actually resolved. And
That
that's
says, President of the council shall appoint an investigative committee composed of the council committee of the whole to direct an investigation to the allegations that Chief Prine has raised with his public statements. Not go back to Chief Prine and ask him all the allegations. We know, we've got his public statements on the record. We know what he's made, what the allegations he has made. those are the allegations that should be investigated. Those should be the outside of the allegations that are investigated.
Madam Vice
I
President.
do want to follow up on what Joel said, because the reason that we're here today having this meeting in the first place is because of the allegations that were made by former Chief Prine to the media. So that's what we are here today to investigate, not to open this back up and say, hey, is there anything else you'd like to tell us? We are here to investigate the allegations that were made. Now, if whoever we hire comes in and they start looking at it, and if they desire to speak with anybody, I think that's perfectly their place to do it. If they want to interview somebody or not, or if they want to do it in,
But not expand the scope of the investigation.
well, and if they want to call him in to talk about these allegations, then that's in their purview to do, or anybody else. But to say, we're wide open now, let's just talk about anything we want to talk about. We're here today because of the allegations that have been made.
Look, if we don't be very careful about defining the scope of this investigation, we're going to be here forever. If we allow the investigator to go shooting off into any area he wants to go to based on what Chief Prine or anybody else says, well, we'll be here forever.
Okay, so let's just say
I'm in agreement with you. If the special counsel needs to interview this guy, they'll be well within their right to do it, and they'll have police. They'll have subpoena ability, which I agree with. We don't have to say that we want him to come in and talk to him unless somebody requests him to be here. I mean, based on the way that this is set up, the question, they're going to want to know what he had to say directly from him anyway, if they are people that do these types of investigations all the time anyway. Is that not correct, Mr. Linder? They would have to answer them anyway, correct?
I would think any special counsel appointed would want to get his testimony
Anyway.
as part of this.
That's correct. So they can ask him. So I'm all for them having subpoena power and being able to ask him to come in and have them ask whatever questions they see fit to get to whatever they need to based on
The scope
the
of what we're
scope of
doing.
work.
Yeah.
They would be bound by the scope as the council.
No.
That is what I'm saying.
No, sir, you're not.
Hang on.
Mr. Davis, please don't put words in my mouth. I want to be as objective as anybody here. And for a person that didn't want to have this process, please don't try to control it.
politics.
All right. So I'm objective as can be here. So I want it to be as clear and as easy and as transparent as possible. I agree that we don't tell him to come in here and we're going to just interview. If they want to call him in, they have every right to call him in and subpoena him for him to ask whatever they want to ask of.
And two, anyone we hire is certainly capable of doing their research ahead of time to find all of the media interviews, get all of the contracts, all of the emails, everything that has gone on around this. So they will be well versed in what was said before they even come to Mobile and start asking for interviews with anyone if they feel like they need them. So I think they're going to know what those allegations are, and of course what we give them as per scope. So, hit Google and you can find everything that has been said in the last 4 weeks.
Madam Vice President,
ahead.
I would point out that Chief Prine has said publicly that he has other bombs to drop. So again, I go back to our resolution says we're going to investigate the allegations that Chief Prine has, past tense, raised with his public statements. Now, I have no objection once the investigation has a defined purpose and a defined scope. I don't have any objection with respect to the investigator interviewing anybody he or she wants to interview. But I don't want that process to turn into mission creep, where what we've said here we're going to investigate becomes something much broader.
Mr. Penn, you've been waiting.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I think, and I'm just, I've been waiting, but we all kind of saying the same thing from the perception. I don't know how we kind of got off track, but I think we follow those guidelines that's been before us, that's been stated. I think William is saying the same thing, that not allowing him to come in and just, make more allegations, but invest what's already been said. But of course, I believe anybody who's doing a third party investigation probably would call him in to want to know more about. If you're investigating, you want to hear from the person who made these allegations. So I'm fine with that. I think we should. I think we put it together.
Much.
Yeah.
And, and Michael, what we might do is what you've heard today, you might go ahead and put something together so that we can all look at it and make sure it's what we all have heard and we're all on that same page before we, get too far along. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, that wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be.
We're not
Yeah,
there.
and I-
We're not there yet.
Yeah, we're not there yet, but I think
Okay.
the four general areas that
Yeah, the
Josh
four
is-
general- yes,
I think
yes.
that covers just about everything that
Yeah.
he had to cover. So I think
Framed within those.
Yeah, and I think that's right. Those four
Topics.
those four categories. Yeah. Thank you, Josh. All right. Anybody else on this portion?
As far as what the clear, concise scope is, I mean, I've got, I mean, are we just narrowing it to these four things? Is that what I
Well,
understand?
Well, those are categories.
Those are categories.
Categories?
So I think a lot of those other things that we're talking about fall within those categories.
yeah. Those are just categories. So there's anything can go under each of those
Trying to
categories.
get back to this importance of asking the questions.
Yeah, so there's a question framed here in OPR. It says, who blank improperly did what in violation of what standard and when?
Yeah.
Now, that would be the question that was very important to be asked. Okay, who improperly did what in violation of what standard and when? With the standard being illegal, unethical, or out of
Right.
policy.
Okay, Corey.
Councilman Reynolds, I believe that is the third party job,
Yes, it is.
is to ask those questions. You want us to now tell them
What question?
how to get to the point of investigating. And I think that's getting too detailed into that. We appreciate OPR, but the people apparently don't want OPR. They want a third party investigator to do it. And then I think that's what we allow them, just giving them the information to be able to do their job.
Yeah, Madam Vice President, but it also goes to the point that I made earlier, that we need to make sure that they get the policies, procedures, and practices of the police department, the Zogby Act, and all of that stuff sent to them ahead of time so that they can be versed in how we work, so that they can be already formed and set up to come in and work within the parameters of what we know. That's why I set those parameters out there of understanding, because it's the only way they can operate. They have to be knowledgeable of our rule sets and how we operate.
Joe.
I think they ought to, as I've said, I think they ought to be able to talk to whoever they want to talk to and see whatever they want to see in terms of documentation.
You lost your train of thought.
The four categories.
That's what he said.
The- No.
OPR. What we're engaged in this is to see whether anybody that's an employee of the city of Mobile acted improperly, right? And so the rules with respect to that inquiry should be the same rules that we apply to all the other employees of the city of Mobile.
That's exactly
Which
it.
is in that document right there. Mr. Reynolds has read to us.
Which is probably pretty broad anyway for any organization, I would think, going
I would
through
just
something like
interested,
this.
You know,
Yeah.
third party in this case. that would-
Yeah, I would think that the parameters of the law, as they apply to the state and everything else, as far as ethics goes, not the law period, not just, an internal law that we have, but any law period that prevents or that prevents somebody from doing something or is inappropriate should apply. And I think that's what any special counsel would do. They're going to be looking at the law period plus what we have in our OPR. So the OPR is great, but the law period
I keep
is
hearing,
also
I
there.
keep hearing this term inappropriate. That's not the standard we agreed to so
Well-
far. It is illegal, unethical, or out of policy, or further
All right, so-
any law, regulation, procedure, standard, or policy.
right, well,
violated.
in absence of a use of a better word, inappropriate means
That's what you
those.
mean.
That's
Yeah,
what
I got you.
that's what I'm stating when I say that. Okay, so don't be semantical on me right now.
But again, this is not, this does not circumscribe the investigation around any particular laws. It's the procedure behind the investigation. So if there was any illegal, when we say illegal conduct, it's municipal law, state law, federal law, EEO, whatever.
It's pretty
Whatever.
broad, yeah.
Yeah, Madam Vice President, I understand all that, and I'm sure that if they are investigators, they understand this right here. I'm just saying, if we want OPR to do it, let's let OPR do it. Why we having a third party?
You're
If
missing
it-
the point.
No. What I'm saying is, I'm not missing the point. What I'm saying is, allow them to do their job. They understand that. We don't have to tell them, I want you to ask these questions right here. Like, you making it like,
This is all you can ask.
yeah, this all you can ask right here is what we ask in our OPR. So what I'm saying is, if we're gonna do that, then it's the same thing OPR is doing the investigation.
I think we agree with you.
Yeah,
At least I agree with Corey. I agree with you.
Agree.
Because I mean,
Well-
we're not. I'm not here to do some cookie cutter questions that are directed to where we already know what the preconceived answer or predetermined answer is. I want the truth. So I want that independent or special counsel to be able to ask whatever they want to ask within the items that we give
Within
them.
the items that we asked.
But that does not limit their questions. That does not limit their questions. It sets a, and it's not OPR conducting the investigation. What it is, it's the rules with respect to how OPR conducts their investigations. And
All right.
the what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Everybody ought to be treated by.
Okay, Josh,
I think from what I'm hearing is we all want to get to the same end game of not holding one employee, whether merit or non-merit, not holding employee at different standards. So I mean, I think what Mr. Reynolds is saying is the outcome. I don't think that Mr. Reynolds is saying use these exact words to do it, but I think that what Mr. Reynolds is saying is using the OPR per se as the measuring tool towards the end of, are we, was there an unreasonable standard or is there an unreasonable? So I guess that's what you're trying to, okay. Yeah. Not necessarily use the same words, but kind of use the same framework of that, we're not asking a third party to come in and hold somebody to a standard that nobody else was even held to and they didn't even know about. So I guess that's what I think is what you're trying to get to, I guess. So.
Scope, though, as I've heard so far, Councilman Woods has only put forward these 4 items, and that may be the limit of the scope. But the scope is currently ShotSpotter, Gulf Coast Technology Center, timeline, and addressing grievances. Those are the 4 items that our investigator would be looking into. Now, well, I mean, that's the scope that I've heard. And then, but if they investigate, they bring in the chief and they ask these specific things. What is the specific, infraction that occurred or whatever? And he says something outside of this scope, how do we address that? I guess is my point. That when Mr. Linder's organization engages with this third party, they're going to have some agreement between the two of them, right? It says, we're bringing you on for this purpose. Does it just say to investigate whatever the whims of the council are? I doubt it.
The whims of Chief Prine.
Or whoever, right? I doubt it's going to be that broad. It needs to be narrowly focused on something. And maybe it's just the resolution that we passed, or maybe it's limited to this, or somewhere in between.
Well, any third party that was contracted to do this would be limited to the scope that the council agrees on. If Chief Prine or anybody were to come up with new allegations or something that did not really fit into one of those, that would be outside. I would view that as being outside their remit. They might report it, say he did say this, but we didn't look into it because that's wasn't what we were there for.
well,
I guess with Councilman Days having about other bombs. If somebody were to drop other bombs, if they don't really fit into one of the topics the council approves, then I would say it's there as part of the record, but it's not part of the report, or the council doesn't really go into that unless it's relevant to those.
Michael, can I get you a microphone over there while I'm thinking about it? Pass one down. Okay, so, all right. Audience members, we're having trouble hearing each other, and other members of the audience who would like to listen are having trouble hearing. If you have conversations between each other, please take them outside. All right. Ben, are you about finished, or do you have more?
I don't know that we resolved anything.
Well-
What do you mean?
Michael, go over what we've got, because what I'd really like for us to get to is basically where we are on this page of the scope, the question, the 4 categories, so that Michael can write something and let us see it, so that it's what we all think it is we are doing before it goes too far.
So the way I understand it, and I want to make sure I have the sense of the council on this, we're going to have a general scope of investigation here, which will be, did anything illegal, unethical, or out of city policy occur? And then we have subtopics under that, those being how did the ShotSpotter program get approved, come about, and what occurred with the third-party review of that, which is my understanding of what Chief Pine complained about on that. Chain of command and issues of administration at the MPD Cyber or Gulf Coast Technology Center, and the inability of the chief to his alleged inability to get information or get what he said he was entitled to out of that. The circumstances and what occurred timeline-wise around Chief Prine being negotiated with or asked to resign or retire. And finally, what occurred with the addressing of any grievances from the chief or non-merit employees.
All right, Joel.
Does that cover everything we
I
talked
think-
about?
All right,
Where I
Joel.
disagree with you, Michael, is that, so there are the 4 areas
4
that
categories.
Josh identified. The question with respect to each of those areas should be, was anything illegal, unethical, or out of policy? Because
Precisely.
so it's not 5 areas.
No.
It's not 5. Well, I think what you said earlier I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying, what you said earlier could have been, there would be a 5th area. Was anything else?
Well, no, I think we're on the same page, Councilman Days. What I was saying is, we've got the general scope is illegal, unethical, or out of policy behavior or actions, or
Not just anything.
and then with respect to each one of those 4 categories. In other words, we've got an overarching remit, which are those illegal, unethical, or out of policy actions subject to these 4 areas.
Exactly right.
Yes.
Josh, would you go through this way that we talked about it, so it may clear up some stuff?
Yeah, so Councilman Carroll went on a binge watch last week, obviously, of the news and took down all his notes on which he's got here. I don't know how his wife reads his handwriting, but really kind of just taking those 4 items down. The one was improper administration of mobile police, that falls under administration. Lack of control over police department intelligence and cyber, that falls under the administration heading. Failure to resolve written grievances, that's grievances with non-merit employees, specifically the former Chief Prine. Collusion with silence or removed from position, that's seeking to remove the timeline, seeking to remove the position. Improper attempts to control or run mobile, that's administration of MPD in the tech center. Allegations that contracts have been improperly entered into without consent of mobile council. To me, that the only contract that was brought up was ShotSpotter, so we're handling that. So basically, when you take the tally marks of all 8, you got 2, 3, and then 1 and 1. So that's that to me, that's what we're trying to accomplish there.
Do they fit under all of your categories?
I mean, I
Okay.
believe so.
Yes, they do.
Joel? All right.
I think we're going to have to get something back in writing.
Right,
from Mr.
exactly.
Linder.
So that everybody can look at it and make sure there are no,
I'll circulate something this week.
Pardon?
I'll circulate something this week,
Okay.
written.
One last thing, are we going to keep illegal, unethical, or out of policy? Are we going to use the same standard that OPR uses, which it basically says the same thing, just has a couple more words?
if they ask for anything, any extra information, like how are merit system employees, how does the city deal with them, like through an office like this, then we can certainly send them what the OPR does for merit employees if they should ask. But I think it's pretty general. Those kinds of questions would be asked anyway. I don't see that they would not be asking the same sorts of things that OPR asks anyway. We don't have to tell them this is what you ask.
Yeah, but again, we do need to send them policies, procedures.
Well,
and
I think they will
those
ask for it.
what we need
Anybody
to
who's
do to make
coming
sure they
in
have.
to do an investigation will ask for
Let them ask
information. Yes. They're not going to come in blind and say, okay, they will ask for information.
Okay.
All right. Are we on to,
We're on the note.
Chief?
Just a point of clarity of what Ben's trying to point out to y'all isn't a line of questioning. It's how do you define a complaint, an allegation that if true would violate the law, would violate the ethics law, would violate the policy. And they go further in the rules, regulations. But so in other words, a complaint is something that if true would be a violation of something. Okay. Just because you don't like somebody or you don't feel like that's not a violation. I just want to point out, he's defining what a complaint is. That's all he's doing.
We're doing, this says law, unethical, or out of policy. That's three things.
I think we got our
The
path
standard
forward.
is law, regulation, procedure, standard, or policy, not just illegal, unethical, or out of policy.
I think it's the same sort of thing.
Forward, all right.
So it's applying the same standard, I think it's just, okay.
Yeah. We're beating a dead horse. I think that's what we're all saying. Okay.
You did.
And I get what you're saying too. I just.
Yeah. Okay.
About time.
All right. Are we ready to move on to the second phase of this? I know it's going to take about a week to generate that, correct, Michael?
I'm gonna shoot to have something to you by Thursday.
Okay, by Thursday. All right.
Uh-oh.
I know what it's gonna say.
So now we need to move on to phase two as who will be doing said investigation. I know we were looking at options, plural. So Josh and Ben were tasked with finding some options to give us, and I don't know exactly where we are in all of this. I know Ben sent an email around the other day. Josh, you've got some that you're looking at as well. So who wants to start?
I can start. So I reached out to some folks to find out, who would conduct this. And the standard that I think should be applied is a totally disinterested third party. Somebody who is, there's no connection whatsoever to any party whatsoever. That is priority number one, completely and totally disinterested. I asked for a reference from the sheriff, and he gave me someone, and I sent that out to everyone. I also received some other law firms. Now, they're local law firms. Now I haven't spoke to these folks, but there is, I don't know if they'd be willing to do it. I don't know if I should even name them publicly without having talked to them. But there are two law firms. One's a local firm, and one's in Baldwin County. I think those may be a little bit too close to the situation. And the other one is a non-attorney group that is a sort of big-time investigative firm called Five Stones Intelligence, and they are, sort of an out-of-town firm, but they're not attorneys. And after looking into this investigator, there may be some conflicts there because he works in law enforcement and has worked with obviously people in the city before. Councilman Woods has got a couple of good options.
So as far as coming about, asked around, contacted some local attorneys just to get their take on it. And I agree with Councilmember Reynolds of really trying to seek the most disinterested person or parties that we can. A lot of times in Mobile, we're guilty. I know I'm guilty of saying, "Oh, I got a guy to do that." Well, I don't want the guy to do that in Mobile. We need to make sure that there's some room of separation. Identified two law firms were recommended to me. And one is out of Birmingham, has a presence in Atlanta, has a presence in DC. And then the other was a local law firm out of Huntsville. It's a pretty older firm, kind of smaller. So I guess as far as firm wise, larger multi-state presence, very, very hard, big governmental group. And then also a law firm that does a lot of contract and governmental law too is out of Huntsville. I guess, is that fair to say, Mr. Linder?
It's fairly fair, yeah.
I will say, we've asked Mr. Linder to reach out to both of these firms, which he has done. And there is a call set up this afternoon. I think Councilman Woods and I are going to sit in on the call and, with this firm to number one, see if they're interested, make sure that they are disinterested, to ask them, direct questions about. Yeah, well, one today for sure.
Only one.
Only
Today.
one today. And then the other one he's got a call into, or maybe spoke with him, or maybe you did. You reached out to
I
them.
know I left the messages with the general, and I think you've had an opportunity to reach out to somebody.
I've sent in a message to a contact at that firm, yes.
And so we're going to find out, ask these questions, are you disinterested? What business have you had in the city of Mobile? But I think it's important that we're able to ask the questions that you all want to ask. So what's important to y'all so that we can ask those questions and truly explore if this is somebody that, sort of meets the burden.
Okay, Corey.
No, thank you, Madam Vice President. I want to make sure we asking questions from the OPR. I'm just playing. I think it's very vital that they have some type of experience, with doing these type of investigations.
So, Michael, you're going to work with Josh and Ben to do some phone interviews with the various firms to see if, in fact, what their answers are to the kinds of questions that we have as far as any experience in the city of Mobile, any interest, and that sort of thing, to make sure that they are independent and don't have a dog in the fight, correct?
100%.
Ma'am, Mr. Reynolds keeps waving his hand and winking his eye at me,
Yeah, I wondered what
wanting
kind of
me
sign
to,
language was going on between
wanting
you
me
two.
to chime in on this. I'm just gonna say this. I have the utmost complete faith that you and Josh will do the right thing and find the right firm. Do the best you can.
Would you like to sit in on the call?
No, sir. I have have faith in you. I'm dependent.
All right.
Hopefully we'll get this right.
And then Mr. Linder can negotiate everything, to make sure that everybody's,
Since we need to come up, once the firm,
Yeah.
we need to come up with a budget with
yeah. That's going to be
I don't
important to
care
make sure
what
that.
it costs.
I know you don't.
I think for present, I think we're just going to find out if they're interested and qualified, and then we'll proceed from there.
Right, because once we get that and we decide, well, also, and ask them in your interviews, when could they start? Because we would like to get started sooner rather than later. So that'll be another thing. But once we get all that settled, then we can come back and determine, the contract and the amount and all that, if it's workable.
An important question, I think, that must be answered in all of this, because I think part of our discussion in passing the original resolution was timeliness. Can you meet the time requirements that we have set aside to get the job done? That'll be important. Of course, the experience, what's it going to cost? A similar situation that you've done this before, can you explain, so what product you put out, what it said, their willingness to adopt, this standard of investigation that we've outlaid here today, and adhere to that. I think those are all very important questions. So I hope someone else will join, Councilman Woods and I on the call this evening.
We have faith.
I know.
All right. Anybody else? All right, I'll have your work set out for you. Appreciate it. And we'll just look to hear back from you on what happens with these cell phone calls. All right, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Great job.
You kind of set up this form.
That's John.